you some questions, and you just answer them to the jury, just like they would come from one of the lawyers, okay? And to the jury, thank you. Some of you may not hear a question you proposed, or it may be slightly rewritten. You can put all of that on me. These are my decisions. I decide what the questions will be at this stage. And so if you're frustrated by that, the end of this process, meaning the end of the process, I'd be happy to talk to you about it. Until then, just assume that I have a good reason for the decision I made. All right? Okay, here are the questions. How many hours or days after the shooting did you first see the scene of the crime as a police officer and as an investigator?
It was 1 week after Sandy Hook that I went to the scene. And
that's actually a pretty good question for Alex Jones, I think.
In your experience and observation, did Mr. Heslin and Ms. Lewis experience greater trauma from the harassment calls and emails?
Not a good question. Seems to assume the premise.
Greater trauma.
Unfortunately, no. That is one flaw. We don't go back and forth. It's just, you just do the best you can with the question the way it's written. And if you can't or you don't understand it, you're free to tell us that as well.
I find it hard to even put myself in the shoes of a family member who's lost a loved one in this situation, especially being a parent who's lost a young child.
Objection on responsibility.
I don't understand that.
So let me just read the question one more time. And if it doesn't work, it's okay. You can just tell us that. In your experience and observation, did Mr. Heslin and Ms. Lewis experience greater trauma from the harassment, the calls, and emails?
So I believe that experiencing that harassment on top of that unbearable is, I can't even imagine, but absolutely, I do believe that is.
Wow.
It is greater and it's extended it.
Wow.
It makes it
shows you where the detective is in all this.
In the aftermath of a school shooting, what, if anything, brings the most solace to a mourning family?
How the heck would he know? Wow.
I have found that that's individual for each one of them. Some is faith, some is just their own family and friends. When we look at it from the law enforcement side about what we can provide to help with that is, I believe it's our responsibility to provide them the truth. As harsh as that truth may be sometimes, is that it's what we can do is fill in as many facts as possible, because otherwise we find that victims will have some type of script of how things went in their mind, and that they'll imagine that it's more horrific than anything actually could be. And so our responsibility is to provide them with every detail that we're able to.
The information you discussed is available through the Freedom of Information Act. When was the information available for viewing on the department's website?
Wow. Also not good for Alex Jones, obviously.
It was that beginning portion of 2014. I know it was after we initially suspended our investigation the first time, which was 1 year afterwards. Well, it could be December 2013, it could be much later in 2014, but I do believe that it was the beginning of 2014.
Was the information available incrementally as it was created, or all at one time at the conclusion of the investigation?
Some information was put out through briefings through our PIO and other forums, but as far as the release of those reports and those photos and everything that we saw in, I believe, Exhibit 27, that was all released all at once. So whenever that release was, that happened once. And then if there was any other follow-up reports, because the case was open and closed with some minor stuff after that, that was continuously redacted through FOIA, and then the site was updated with that new information.
Do you know how the other families are dealing with their loss?
Ooh, this is actually a good
And
question
I found
for
that
Alex
that's very
Jones.
much an individual, not just by family, but by family members. And that has,
A lot of the other
changed
family
and
members have not
progressed
sued. That's why this is a good
over
question.
time. It's one of the things that our consultant, Dr. Belboni, who is a psychologist, educated us on, was the different stages of grief and how we should expect these different family members to go through all those stages over time. And because they each experienced their loss in different ways, we saw them as individuals of this whole group really progress through that. Some, I believe, are much farther along in that process, and some still have a long way to go in that process.
Thank you so much, Detective. That concludes your testimony to the stage, and you may exit the witness stand. May this witness be released from the rule and any second.
All right, folks. We're gonna move on to. Let's see if I can find it here. That's not it. Yeah, this is what I wanted to pick up. So, welcome to the Great American Male live stream of a few questions of the lead detective in the Alex Jones defamation trial. This is our first in this series. Again, the Great American Male is the Florida and Georgia lawyer that breaks down the events of the day through the Constitution, the law, and history. And I wanted to give you a little bit of a tease of that. I haven't been able to cover this trial earlier. That is a live stream. What we just on, that is a live stream of the actual trial that is going on right now. They started this morning with opening statements, and I'm going to come back and tell you it's not really a trial, but it's sort of a trial. They started with opening statements, and then that gentleman there in the green suit with the green tie is the lead detective in the case. What we're looking at here is a little bit of a docket from the firm Farrar and Ball that is suing Alex Jones. I want to tell you what's going on here. So before I do that and give you an idea, this is a little bit of a railroad job here. Obviously, it's not really a trial. It's really a damages hearing, if you will. So Alex Jones has been found in so-called default. You'll see up here, order on motion for default. If you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see that he has been found. In default. Has been entered with respect to liability of the lawsuit. He's also been ordered to pay attorney's fees. So what we're doing here is we are determining how much damages Alex Jones and the various companies that have also been found in default are going to have to pay. And you can already hear from those questions, the fact that you've got several questions, almost all of them, that were pro-plaintiffs already tells you where the jury is in determining what they're going to do. Some of them have already bought into the idea that Jones' statements here could be defamatory. And the long story short about this is that if you look and see what this is about not about anything Alex Jones said at the time. It's about things that he said much later in his career while I think he was on Megyn Kelly, being interviewed, and he said some things about it. And some people heard that interview and determined that they have been defamed. Now, this isn't typically the way you think about defamation, because defamation pretty much always is damage to your reputation. This is not really damage to your reputation at all. This is somebody saying something that, even if you believe, folks, that it is abhorrent, and we do, that this person said some things that they probably shouldn't have said. We're probably going to do some more on this. We're going to continue to follow it, but I want to just sort of, again, since I couldn't do the openings this morning because I had something else going on, I thought I would bring you in. This is as good a chance as any. The detective has now done. So the way they've done it is, obviously, the plaintiffs asked questions of the detective first. Second, then Alex Jones's lawyer did cross. And then the way that's doing it in this courtroom in front of this judge is she permits the jurors to come up with questions. They come in after the break, and they read the questions, decide which ones are objectionable, which ones are not, and what you heard were the ones that were not. So they should be going on to another witness. Let's see what's going on in the courtroom. Yeah, they have now called another witness. So we may cover some of these witnesses. I'm not as concerned about this witness today. But before I leave you, I did want to walk you through how Alex Jones got to where he is and why he is in default, just so you understand. So here is the actual hearing petition. That's what it's called in Texas. Here you can actually get it. And I will put a link to this InfoWarsLawsuit.com in the description. I went live so fast I didn't have to time to put a description in there. But I'll put a link to this. You can scroll through it yourself. A lot of interesting documents in here. But you can tell this isn't the actual docket. I've been looking for it today. I should find it at some point, the actual docket, so we can go through it. So we're still missing some documents. But then you can see here's the answer that Alex Jones and his crew filed. They sued not only Alex Jones, but InfoWars, Free Speech Systems, and Owen Schroeder. This is all because they are based in this Travis County, Austin area here. And you'll see that very early on, right, they filed a motion for sanctions, a motion for expedited discovery. And early on, they get it. So we're talking August. So they filed the petition in April. By August, they're looking for expedited discovery. They're already accusing them of sanctions, right? Scroll down, you'll see there's a hearing on the. Alex Jones's crew has filed a motion to dismiss, and they're seeking. The plaintiffs are seeking to get them to give discovery. We can see there was a hearing held on August 30th. All right. After, I can tell you, I've already read that transcript. I'm going to try to keep this one a little on the shorter side today. So I went through that. Basically, the judge came down the road and said, look, I'm going to give you a certain amount of discovery. You need to answer the discovery. Well, the plaintiffs did not like the discovery that Alex Jones's crew filed. And if you scroll through this motion here, this is a motion for contempt. So after they moved to say, hey, make them respond to discovery, the judge issues an order. The reason you do that is now you've got an order. So if they don't respond to the discovery, you're not just deficient on a discovery response, you're actually in contempt of the order potentially, which is what this motion is meant to contemplate. You see here their main problem, right, is that in response to each and every interrogatory request for productions, defendants refused to answer. Rather than answer, defendants asserted that the court's order of August 31st had been wrongly decided. I've looked at the responses, and that is basically what they say. They say, look, we can't respond. And they have a motion to dismiss, which is being appealed up on the appellate court. So that gets us to October 1st of 2018. By September, okay, after this thing goes up on appeal, right? Designation of filings for the clerk. So they file that motion for contempt on October 1st, 2018. The case is up on appeal by October 10th, right? By the time it comes back down, which it took it apparently years to do, you've now got an order on motion for default. And it says here, if you scroll down real quickly, you'll find in the pertinent findings, in reaching its decision, the court has considered lesser remedies before imposing sanctions that preclude defendants' ability to present the merits of their liability defense and determined that it would be inadequate in light of the history of defendants' conduct in this case. Well, there hasn't been very much conduct in this case. But so anyway, the point of this, we may go into it in more detail in future live streams. I just want you to understand, folks, basically Alex Jones was sued. The plaintiffs tried to get expedited discovery. The defendants filed a motion to dismiss. It was denied. They tried to get an appeal. And while all that was going on, they were having a dispute as to discovery. And very quickly, the court determined, hey, you're not paying attention to me. I told you to give this limited discovery. You didn't. Therefore, your case is in default, and you will be permitted no defense. So because you're not permitted any defense and you're in default, now we go to damages. And this is just basically the jury at this point, how much they're going to give Alex Jones for this case. I just want you to understand that this is not a situation where he's been found guilty of defamatory conduct. Now, this did go up to the Court of Appeals, and I researched that briefly today. It came back down because the Court of Appeals had determined that no real ruling had been made, and so it wasn't ripe. So all this will go, once it all goes through the system this week, or maybe take longer, but whatever it does, whatever the jury comes up with, it'll all go back up on appeal, and we shall see. But anyway, I wanted to dip my toe into the Alex Jones. I have been following it and want to bring you up to it. We will be doing further live streams on this, I assure you. So if you would hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, share this with other friends, and we will see you next time when we cover Alex Jones or whatever else we cover. It depends often on what we do. So we will see you then.